Well, just say no. That's what U.S. Senator Mark Kirk says about raising taxes and increasing limits on spending. Senator Kirk was joined by freshman State Representative Jason Barrickman yesterday at Parkland College to discuss where our state could be headed if government fails to address these hot topics. ABC News Channel 15's Brett Bagansky was there and has the story.
The Indiana governor has hailed this as a pro-jobs measure for Indiana because so many businesses will leave our state, and I think that's unfortunate.
U.S. Senator Mark Kirk says he's afraid any income tax increase is an end to economic growth in Illinois. Forbes magazine ranked Illinois the worst state with financial management as it carries a $15 billion deficit. And many lawmakers feel we could be headed for a massive nosedive.
The ultimate insult that Springfield has done this week is pass this massive tax increase without addressing any reform measures and without cutting any spending. It's simply an insult to the voters.
Governor Quinn signed the biggest income tax increase in state history Thursday, an increase of 66%. Representative Jason Barrickman said elections have consequences, with November's campaign on two platforms: a spending cut or a tax increase.
It wasn't a huge majority that passed it, but there were more people voting for that message of an increase in taxes, and that's what we've got.
The two lawmakers stressed the importance of going back to the drawing board. They both say it will have to come down to reform at both levels if our country wants to remain a top economic power.
I think we need to cut spending across the board.
John says he has applied for Florida residency. U.S. Senator Mark Kirk says the tax hikes will continue to chase businesses away from Illinois. Kirk was in Peoria today to meet with his small business advisory group. Kirk intends to use the group to help small businesses, which represent more than half of Illinois' jobs. He says passing the tax increases last week will hurt the economy as businesses look to move out of the state, as we just mentioned, like Jimmy John's. Yesterday's business invitation from Indianapolis Mayor Greg Ballard was a prime example as to why the GOP senator wants to focus on reversing the state's bad brand.
I worry that on top of the very public corruption that we had with Governor Ryan and Governor Blagojevich, we now are being seen as a high tax, high cost state. How do you attract new businesses if that's your brand?
Kirk says Illinois is the only state in the union to publicly increase taxes instead of cutting.
News. Eric, Danny, back to you.
Steve, thanks for that report.
Steve. Senator Mark Kirk also mentions the Tucson shooting during his appearance at a Martin Luther King event in Rockford. Senator Kirk stopped by Youth Build Rockford to talk to students in the program. He says he's familiar with the organization from his days as a congressman working with Youth Build in Waukegan. Kirk believes in the more than week since Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords was shot in Arizona, political leaders have toned down their attacks on each other.
I think Gabby Giffords was doing exactly what she should have been doing, which is talking to the people that she works for. I've held now 3 town hall meetings since the shooting, including yesterday with Congressman Danny Davis, bipartisan and bicameral.
Senator Kirk says he plans more town halls as he spends the next week traveling northern and western Illinois.
Democrat meets Republican to talk about boosting business around Chicago. Senator Mark Kirk and Representative Danny Davis hosted a bipartisan breakfast and town hall meeting downtown. Kirk says the one thing they agree on most is making sure there is no pause in the effort to expand O'Hare Airport. And they say that after the shootings at a congressional event in Arizona last week, it's business as usual for them.
I mean, obviously, there was plenty of security here around the building, in the building. I don't think that we're getting bent out of shape in terms of changing lifestyles and changing the way that we function.
Sending a strong message that Republicans and Democrats can and do work together, that we are both pro-Illinois.
Kirk says he's generally opposed to more government spending, but he says federal dollars for the O'Hare expansion are worth more in job creation.
Thank you, Mark. And back to news now, where Illinois' newest U.S. senator says the tragedy in Tucson will not keep him from holding town hall meetings throughout the state. Mark Kirk told the crowd at his most recent town hall meeting in Champaign that federal spending is too high and a top concern. Kirk said the federal government needs an amendment requiring a balanced budget, just like most states, including Illinois, has. The Republican senator said that there are federal programs that could be cut entirely.
Along with Senator Mark Kirk, vowed not to cut back on their public schedule, though Kirk admitted he'll be coordinating security a bit more carefully with local law enforcement, and perhaps choosing his words more carefully.
We should not end our disagreements. I am a fiscal conservative and think we should cut spending and lower taxes. But when we talk about our opponents on the other side, be much more genteel.
And that's, and in other words, the supporters are taking their cue from the elected officials.
That's right.
Kirk told me he was beginning a 2-week tour throughout the state of Illinois. First meeting tonight in Collinsville, Illinois, downstate. He's going to be coordinating with local law enforcement there, as he will everywhere else. Congressmen, senators have no Secret Service, Rob. They say they're all going to be a bit more careful.
Kirk held one of his own in Collinsville. As News Channel 5's Ann Rubin explains tonight, he says canceling wasn't an option.
I was concerned it might be canceled, but I'm glad they didn't. It makes a statement in itself.
With this town hall meeting, Senator Mark Kirk hopes constituents got the message.
To show that the work of the Congress and our democracy cannot be stopped by one wacko in Arizona.
Still, coming on the heels of the Arizona shooting that gravely injured a congresswoman and killed a federal judge and several others, security was a concern.
After any crisis, you relook at your standard operating procedures, you look at your panic buttons, your entrance, egress.
The politicians worked closely with Collinsville police on security. That meant added vigilance and an extra officer.
I'm not afraid, and I don't think that we have to feed into the fear. I think we need to keep our heads about it, always be wise about who you're around.
On this night, the American Legion Hall was nearly full, and with a focus on spending and taxation, dozens got their questions answered. Still, the concern for some that increased security in the future will limit access between politicians and their public.
My concern is that they're going to build such a security apparatus. They're going to be so reluctant to go back out in the street and everything that we may lose access to them.